Well, one day to go to find out whether or not the President of the United States is bluffing concerning the tariffs, the 25% tariffs. There's no reason to believe that he is bluffing at this point. I would dare say 25% across the board, with the exception potentially. And I predict there will be a carve-out for oil because of the impact that it will have on U.S. consumers at the price of the pump. And that would be an immediate impact, and that's blowback that Trump doesn't want. But I would say right across the board, we're going to be looking at this tariff, folks. And how do we respond to that? Well, that's the big question, right? How do we respond with that is the big question. We can talk tough and say dollar for dollar tariff, and that's all well and good, but who pays for that? Ultimately, you pay that, right? If we say, okay, everything coming north, we're going to put a 25% tariff on as a retaliatory measure, well, that's just you paying that percent more. That's all it is. And I can imagine the logistics of all of this for exporters and importers and purchasers. And think about the automotive industry, how closely that's linked. The vehicles cross the border, or components of the vehicles once before totally being manufactured across the border a number of times, up to 9 times. You can imagine logistically what's going on here. We're going to respond to this as best we can throughout today and moving forward, including on Monday, in which we are going to forego our counselors on the hot seat segment because we feel we've made a decision that this is going to be more important to respond to this, whether it happens or not. I'm suggesting that it will on Monday. We're going to talk to Mark Brewer, University of Maine, get the political response to this from south of the border. I'll be chatting with the Atlantic Chamber of Commerce CEO, Dan Kelly. CFIB, Moshe Lander is going to join the show. I'll be talking with a representative from the Canadian manufacturers and exporters about all of this. We're going to try and talk to the Premier on Monday as well about all of this. So lots and lots of response. And, of course, today we'll get your take on all of this and open the phone lines. If you thought that you wanted a Donald Trump presidency and you liked the guy and you thought it would be a bit of a kick for 4 years to watch, well, be careful what you wish for, because this is getting real at this point. And what will the response be? Well, again, we'll continue to look at this and react to this as the day goes on, and as the days go on. Claudia Chender is going to join us after the 10:30 news. By the way, the leader of the NDP here in Nova Scotia, they're calling for a task force to be struck to support workers and local businesses, because now that's the big question. How far do we go with supports, and how much can we afford to go with supports? And how deep are the pockets of the federal and provincial governments? And depends on how long this goes on for. It's just unfortunate. It really is that we have to deal with this, but it is what it is. We have to move forward and have to figure it out. So anyway, these are things that we're going to talk about throughout the day, along with a lot of other things, of course. And look forward to hearing from many of you when we open the phone lines in about an hour's time. I'd like to thank Vanessa Vandeness on the other side of the glass. The control board's doing a fine job as always. All right, joining us now is the Minister of Health here in Nova Scotia, Michelle Thompson. Minister Thompson, thanks for joining the show. We appreciate your time.
Good morning, Todd.
So you had a busy week hosting your federal counterparts this week?
Indeed. Yeah, we had our federal, provincial, and territorial meetings the last couple of days, and so they wrapped up yesterday around 4 o'clock.
Okay, what are some of the highlights that you'd like to mention?
Well, the first day, the provincial and territorial ministers met and were able to talk about some of the common challenges that we have, but also the solutions that we've found. Some are similar, some are not. And so when we meet as provinces and territories, it gives us an opportunity to really discuss some of the things that are happening in our own provinces and territories and things we've implemented. So we've also get to talk about our relationship with the federal minister and the federal government in advance of our meetings with them and things that we want to highlight. And then, of course, we were pleased to have Minister Holland and Minister Sachs with us yesterday, talking about health workforce, the bilateral funding agreements, looking at innovative care models, just how are we going to tackle some of the things that are ahead of us, and where can we create foundational policy and legislation that will help all. So it was productive time together. They happen annually. in person.
Yeah, I would think that in some ways it would be kind of cathartic in that you can share your common struggles and trials, yet sobering in a way because you realize that it's happening everywhere else, right? So that's a two-edged sword to this, right?
That's right. It definitely is, and we were able to share some of the successes we've had in Nova Scotia, and we were really proud to showcase the Nova Scotia Innovation Hub as an example. We were able to talk about some of the strategies. It's quite impressive. We have 840,000 more primary care access points per year in our province, and so people were really interested in that. But they had things to share with us as well. So there'll be work to do and follow up over the coming weeks.
All right. What's your what was the take on pharmacare? Because we know that Minister Holland wants the pharmacare has been passed federally, and now it's up to the federal government to broker deals with the individual provinces. Where are we, Nova Scotia, when it comes to a potential deal with pharmacare with the feds?
Yeah, so it's a great question. We met with Minister Holland, and I were able to meet last week in advance of this week's meetings, and we did have some very candid discussions. The bilateral funding is important, and they outline overall, tenets of that proposal, but we need to tailor it to Nova Scotia, and so we know we don't only want to look at our population, the ways in which they fund, but also the burden of disease. And so we were able to have some candid conversations about, how best that funding could flow to Nova Scotia. And so the officials in both departments, Health Canada and Department of Health and Wellness, are in active discussions. We know that it's a time-sensitive matter, and we have to be really prudent. We have to really think about, these bilateral agreements are important, but the funding is always for a short period of time, whether that be 3 years or 5 years. And so fiscally, we need to make sure that we're able to maintain those programs moving forward so that they are sustainable. So they're complicated discussions, but we're committed to, to working out the details to the best of our ability.
All right. Some have concerns that what happens if would they have to give up their own plan, their own private health care? Some people are quite happy with their health care. Obviously, others would benefit greatly from a national pharmacare plan. So,
yeah.
So what are your thoughts on the nuances of all of this?
Well, I think, those details are being worked out, but certainly if people already have coverage, government doesn't necessarily want to step into that space, but we do want to make sure that there's equitable access to medications that are required. And so more details will come as the funding comes out. Similarly, if we look at other programs that we have, in Nova Scotia, I'll point to the continuous glucose monitoring program. We were able to tailor that based on income. Some people have coverage, those types of things. So I don't want people to worry. This is to enhance access to the medications and things that are required, not to restrict it in any way. So there'll be more to say once those details are finalized.
Okay, part of it though is bulk buying and the ability for the program to bulk buy, and that's how it keeps costs down. So that could impact the drug supply to some degree. What are your thoughts?
Well, we have a process called the Pan-Canadian pricing agreements that we have, and the department works through that. So there are a number of things in place that allow us to be as fiscally responsible as we expand access to different things. So, the department officials are probably the best ones to tell you about the nuts and the bolts of that, but I trust that process. And the intention of the federal government and the intention of us is really to make sure that it's equitably distributed, that people have more access, not less. And so we'll look at those processes going forward.
All right, family doctors and team-based care and trying to deal with getting people to just primary care. What can you tell us about what was said, some of the dialogue, some of the info that was shared about this?
So we talked a lot about, of course, team-based care and primary health care. Now, the old structure of all of us going through one door and seeing a family physician, those days have gone by for a number of reasons. I think you need to look at the scope of allied healthcare professionals and the ability that they have now to deliver primary care. We see it in pharmacists, we see it in nurse practitioners. So we want a team-based approach to care, and physicians have a very important role. And we want to make sure that that these teams are well-rounded and that people can go to different folks for different things. So as an example, when we go to diabetic education clinics, as an example, patients see nurses and they see dietitians, and the physician comes in just really to overview and see, maybe change the medications. So there's opportunities for team-based care, and certainly the Canadian Medical Association was there, as well as the Canadian Nursing Association and the union, Canadian Federation of Nurses Union, all very much behind a team-based approach. But that happens incrementally because of the staffing shortages that we experience. And so one problem always, or one initiative always hooks into other initiatives that have to happen. So increased training seats for all of the healthcare providers that we need, looking at, pathways and recognizing credentials from other jurisdictions to support workforce. We want to have ethical recruitment. So we know that there's a global shortage of healthcare workers, and we don't want to steal from less fortunate countries and bring healthcare workers here where they're needed in other places. So we want to really invest in countries and help them not only support the healthcare system in Canada, but help them support their own. So a lot of time is spent really talking about workforce, talking about primary care models, team-based care, and the expectation of the public that we have more opportunities now with technology. How do we empower patients to be a really significant member of their healthcare team? And I would point to your Health NS, right? Our app allows patients to really accompany their health team, see their results, access care, those types of things. So really it's a time of modernizing our healthcare, and it's challenging, but there was a lot of excitement in the room as well.
Okay, reducing red tape, eliminating burdens for the burden that it is for doctors. Tell us about what progress was made there.
So we're really proud of the work that's happened in Nova Scotia. We're country leading. The work that happened around red tape reduction came from a conversation that where physicians indicated that they were spending about 500,000 hours a year on red tape, and Premier Houston set a target for the collective to reduce that, and so set a target of 400,000 hours. And through the work that's happened in the province, we can now reduce that burden by 425,000 hours. So pleased to be able to do that, looking at forms, looking at allied healthcare professionals supporting physicians like physician assistants, so many forms and paperwork that the physicians fill out by hand, so very simple things like being able to auto-populate forms as an example, reducing paperwork, looking at different technologies, those types of things, and then passing legislation to support to support this work, and getting rid of sick notes as an example. So there's been a lot of focus on this work, working with physicians to understand how to not only support more clinical hours, but also to improve their work-life balance.
All right, before I let you go, I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you about this incident that happened yesterday. Man charged with attempted murder after 4 workers attacked at the QE2 emergency room. Obviously, what can you say about this? It's what measures are you looking at in order to help deal with this type of thing?
So we know that there has been increasing incidences of violence towards staff, particularly in the emergency room, but across the healthcare system. Certainly, there is security contracts in place. There's been an increase in the amount of security over time, not just recently, but the previous budget was $12 million, which has grown to $20 million in the last fiscal year. Training with staff, having security staff in emergency departments in order to support folks. I can't say much about the investigation because I can't say much about the incident because the investigation is underway. But I can say that we've leaned in. We want to hear from staff, the unions, looking at measures that we can implement that will improve staffing. There is a $7 million fund that was negotiated in the last nurses union contract to address some of the issues around security and safety. And there's an ongoing work with the committee that includes the employer, so IWK and Nova Scotia Health, the Department of Health, as well as the unions to understand what is occurring and how best to prevent it. And, those groups met last Friday and continue to meet on a regular basis in order to implement initiatives to support the safety of staff.
Okay, Minister, appreciate your time. Thanks so much.
Great. Have a good day.
All right, take care. Health Minister Michelle Thompson. We'll talk to Sandra Mullen about this incident when we come back. Halifax police have laid charges against a 32-year-old man after a violent incident at the QE2 hospital on Wednesday. According to police, officers were called to a report of a man with a knife at the hospital around 1 o'clock. A man who was receiving care at the hospital stabbed 2 people in the emergency room and injured 2 others by throwing objects at them, read a media release from Halifax Regional Police. They say one of the victims suffered significant injuries. Joining us to talk about all of this is Sandra Mullen, president of the Nova Scotia Government and General Employees Union. Sandra, thanks for joining the show. We appreciate it.
No problem. Good morning.
All right. So obviously the last thing that anybody wants to talk about is this, but this is something that you've had concerns with for a number of years leading up to this, right?
Exactly. We've been expressing our concerns about the exact issue that folks could get in there with a weapon, and here we are.
Okay. What can you tell us about the members that were impacted? Any updates? I know privacy may be at play here, but...
Exactly. We understand that both folks that were injured physically are doing okay. Certainly there's a road of recovery, and we will be following up with them. And our thoughts are with them and their families. We have also, one of the members was part of our support services team. So those are folks who do everything from cleaning, cooking, patient attendant, maintenance, that sector. The other person was part of the healthcare occupational team, and those are folks who do MRIs, respiratory tech, social workers, that sector. So we work with certainly supporting both of those. They're all part of a huge team that operate in all of those areas of the hospital, in particular in the emergency rooms. And, we know that it could have been much worse, and likely because of all the folks who work together, they would have been able to contain what could have been serious injuries to other patients and general population in the HR, and certainly our folks who are the nurses, our admin professionals, all the people who work there.
Okay, what's the province guaranteed or promised in response to this when it comes by way of improving safety?
Well, I heard the minister indicate there is a budget for safety. There is a committee working together. Mm-hmm. But as noted, just 2 years ago, we met with our folks at the emergency rooms and tried to make recommendations about what their concerns were. And a key recommendation is that of safety, trying to prevent those weapons from coming in the door. As we've seen, with shortages in staffing, it causes longer wait times. That just escalates behavior. So all of those things, it is the employer's responsibility to provide a safe workplace for the employees and for the patients who come there. So this is bringing this to the forefront, sad but true, and we are willing to work with the employer, and we will be setting up a meeting with them. I know the CEO has made a comment about that there is going to be some action on this, and so we need to keep going with this and make sure that those safety measures are put in place.
Okay, well, what do the safety measures look like? Are we talking metal detectors, or what are we talking here?
Well, that's what our folks are asking for. And when you think about it, we're going through screening tools when we walk in a courtroom, when we walk into a sporting event, mm-hmm. Or a concert. You have to go through a screening setup. So that should not be that difficult, for the safety of all those involved. And we do know that there are security folks on site, but those folks have a job description and inabilities to do certain things. We've also talked about, policing on site, because certainly waiting for somebody to be able to handle a situation such as that is timing is critical. We see, police persons in our retail areas, such as a grocery store or liquor store, mm-hmm. Preventing shoplifting. Here we have some situations, and yet another one yesterday. So we know it's a need, and so we need the employer to buy into this, and we're certainly working with them.
Any idea what the cost would be for all of these? Not to suggest that should be the final determining factor, but it's always a reality.
Sure. No, I have no idea what a cost of a metal detector is, but I can tell you that they can quickly add up the cost of 2 injured employees and the psychological trauma that would have happened to everyone else in that room.
Indeed. So what is the, I guess, how does this impact your fellow members of the union? I would assume that the morale's already challenged as it is. What's this do when it comes to people's morale, I suppose?
Well, they are all very, the members who work within those areas are very concerned for what the incident that happened and the impact that happened to their colleagues. But they are looking to us to keep going with this to ensure that safety measures get put in place to prevent this from happening. We've said all along that this was a potential to happen, and here we are. We do know from reports that we're reading as well, it just enhances our call out for more mental health supports for folks and for, an ability to service that need. I've had everything come at me from, housing related issues. We've identified that there are crises in this province and we need to address them. So we need to keep our members safe, and it is the employer's responsibility to do that. So we are pursuing the actions that they've indicated they are looking to put in.
What type of time frame would be acceptable in order to see some real action here, do you think? Obviously,
last week is a little too late.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah. We look to see this in an urgent matter, and as the minister indicated, there is a committee set up, but it is the responsibility of the employer to put these things in place. So we are waiting for a meeting with them, and we will be updating our members on that.
Okay, Sandra, I appreciate your time. Thanks so much.
No problem. Thank you.
All right, take care. Sandra Mullen, President of the Nova Scotia Government and General Employees Union, and that's the last place. Look, when you go to the emergency room, obviously anybody who's there is there for, then nobody wants to be there, right? But that's the last place you want to feel unsafe for sure. And it's unfortunate that we've reached a time in which we have to have metal detectors at emergency rooms, but that's what it looks like it's coming to, folks. It's unfortunate. It really, really is. And just when you think that things can't get worse, they seem to get a little worse, don't they? Mark Carney's in town, by the way. We did our best to get him here in studio, but it did not work out. He's in Halifax. He's speaking right now. And anyway, we wanted to have him here in studio. Vanessa did her best, but we couldn't make it happen. But we'll continue to try and talk to Mark Carney and all the Liberal hopefuls for that matter. And Mark Carney has called the existing consumer carbon pricing policy divisive. Yeah, right. No kidding, eh? He's expected to show Canadians this morning his plan to abandon the policy and replace it with incentives for consumers to go green. But Carney still intends to keep industrial carbon pricing in place. The former Bank of Canada governor is in the running to become the new party leader who will be elected on March 9th. Look, folks, it's pretty much a done deal at this point. Jaime Batiste stepped out yesterday of the race. He's put his support behind Mark Carney. I find it interesting that Mark Carney all of a sudden has an epiphany that consumer carbon pricing is divisive. I think that we knew that for quite a long while now, folks. It's funny how people become enlightened. So it takes quite a while to become enlightened, but then the light bulb turns on, and then they want to take credit as though they've come up with some individual thought, some unique thought process. Give me a break. Anyway, we'll talk politics with Lori Turnbull in the next half hour. Before that, a chat with Claudia Chender. We'll be back. All right, joining us is Claudia Chender, leader of the NDP, official opposition leader here in Nova Scotia. Claudia, thanks for joining the show. We appreciate your time, of course.
Todd?
All right, so we're on the cusp of tariffs, and I think at some point we have to move past threats to reality, and you are calling for a task force to be struck in order to help deal with this. Tell us why you feel a task force is needed.
Well, I've been talking to labor and industry and other leaders across the province for the last couple of weeks, and one of the things that I hear is real fear, obviously. Lots of workers worried about the future of their jobs, but also bewilderment, really, at why the Premier has been radio silent. I know in New Brunswick, there's a very active multi-sector roundtable advising the Premier there. Same thing in Newfoundland. They're bringing industry and other leaders to the States with them as they try to understand what's happening. And those premiers are also communicating in real time back to the Nova Scotians who would be impacted, what they're hearing from Ottawa and what they're hearing from the States. And here we've got none of that. And the Premier couldn't even be bothered to show up to Cabinet yesterday and answer simple questions. So I think people are scared, and I think they're looking to the Premier for leadership, and I think there's a real vacuum. So I think we need to have a process where, it's two ways, where the Premier can hear from companies and sectors and labor and other leaders about the perceived impacts and what kind of help they might need, and can also communicate what he's hearing. And nothing like that's happening here.
All right. What particular sectors do you think are the most vulnerable here?
Well, I think our resource sectors, so certainly the fishery is very exposed. We've got lots of product that comes back and forth over the border, particularly frozen product. We are exposed in terms of Christmas trees and agriculture, all kinds of manufacturing, different items. So I think it's pretty widespread. And I think we even have companies who are doing work on both sides of the border, sending things back and forth. So I think there's lots of confusion, even if the worst comes to pass tomorrow, what that actually means on the ground. And so folks need help navigating that, and I don't think they're getting it right now.
Yeah, for sure. So a task force, who would be? How many people do you think it would sit on a task force, and what would the construct of a task force look like, ideally?
Well, if we look to other provinces, so I mentioned the Atlantic provinces, but we know that Manitoba and BC have similar. We would look for, labor for sure, private sector labor, like, Unifor and the big unions that represent workers. We would look to industry. So here we'd look to our fisheries and seafood folks. We'd look to our agriculture leaders, maybe those federations who can speak for, those sectors. Certainly we'd look for, some First Nations involvement in terms of how the border and decisions like this might impact them. And obviously, we'd like to be involved as representatives of, tens of thousands of Nova Scotians to be able to communicate effectively to our constituents what's happening. And, we have some precedents for this with COVID, right? When we had this huge threat that we didn't know how to deal with, that we had never seen before, the then government did start to gather people together, to listen to folks, and to communicate information in a different way. Those are the things that need to happen now.
Okay, when it comes to supports, how do we determine who gets what? How much money goes out the door? You get the federal government as well. I mean, these are things that, as you mentioned, unfortunately, we have a precedent for not all that long ago with COVID. But how do we prioritize who gets what and how that all gets rolled out? Because one thing we don't want is money wasted, and that happened during COVID. Haste made waste, and this idea that we got to get money out the door as quickly as possible often leads to bad decisions. So how do we approach this?
Well, this is why we should we should have been having these conversations weeks ago because we've known these threats were coming. I think one of the big pieces is, where is the federal government on this? Obviously, any kind of support is going to have to be a joint effort. And I think your question is a really good one, and it's one we have to explore. I mean, from my perspective, I think we need to, as I talk to Nova Scotians, we need to make sure we protect jobs. I think we need to make sure that we keep the employers here who are the part of the fabric of our province and our communities, and who want to be here but may be forced into some difficult decisions. And I think we need to look at USAE as at the most efficient way of doing that.
Yeah, for sure. But it all starts with dialogue and conversation, and it appears as though right now that the Premier doesn't even show up for cabinet. That doesn't, and is there anything scheduled for tomorrow? Like, you would think that the Premier would have something scheduled for tomorrow, which is Tariff Day, right?
Absolutely. I mean, we need leadership, Todd. We need to hear from the person who's going to be at the helm of these decisions what's happening, what the reaction is, what's going on in government, what the conversations are federally, and we've heard none of that. We have a premier and a cabinet who aren't even particularly interested in giving interviews to anybody. We only hear, via paid advertisement what the plans are. So I think it's time for some leadership and to hear what exactly folks are going to be facing and how they're going to receive help.
Yeah, indeed, and of course we've got Michelin here in the province. I mean, there's a lot of big industry here, and thousands of jobs potentially at stake here. Absolutely. I mean, Michelin, so manufacturing, as we talked about, and they'd be a company that would be able to traverse borders pretty quickly, and so. If we're looking at things like tires, if we're looking at things like, obviously Ontario has the automotive, but there's an analogy here with our fisheries. So, there's lobster that moves back and forth across the border. Fresh product might come here to be processed, then go back to the U.S. to be sold. How does that work? Where does the tariff attach? Who's bringing the product back and forth across our border? Huge questions, and big industries that are big employers in lots of rural parts of the province that don't want to see those jobs leave. So we need to know what's happening. And of course, the kind of abrupt, out of nowhere letter posted in the Chronicle Herald last week, and I talked to the Premier about it a few days before that. He kind of hinted at it, but of natural resources extraction and that kind of came out of nowhere, and it almost seemed to me like it was like take advantage of a crisis when it arrives. Oh, absolutely. I mean, I think we need to talk about the future of our natural resource sector and the jobs and how those traditional industries can evolve and continue. But the Premier's letter, none of that was in the election platform. When he's talking about, removing moratoriums on George's Bank and removing moratoriums on fracking, now those are things that came about because of science and engagement and, community participation. So that's a big conversation he's opening up. But even on things like critical minerals, there's no horizon for that. And even in the next 10 or 20 years, there's no market partners. There's nobody knocking at our door. So why we're talking about that now and we're not talking about the real threat that's coming at us tomorrow is kind of mystifying. Indeed. Okay. Claudia, appreciate your time. Thank you so much. We'll do it again. Thanks so much, all right,
Todd.
Take care. Claudia Chender, leader of the NDP. Lori Turnbull when we come back.
Thanks.
All right, so joining us now is Lori Turnbull, political science professor, Dalhousie University. Lori Turnbull, thanks for joining the show as always.
Hey, I'm Todd. Thanks for having me.
All right, I got a news flash from Mark Carney. This one was earth-shattering news flash. The carbon tax is divisive. Can you believe that? He finally came up to that conclusion?
Yeah, I was watching him just before you called. I was watching his press conference before we talked, so I'd be able to get as much as I could from what he said.
Yeah.
And yes, he was just kind of landing on that point. When Vanessa called me, it was very much yes, this is kind of having an effect. There's reason to show that the carbon tax has had some impact on, in terms of our emissions, our damage to the climate, but yet it has become such a polarizing issue that basically he's going to switch to something else. If he becomes the prime minister, he's going to take away the consumer tax and then put the focus on the corporate big polluters and make them pay for it.
Is it too late, or is Carney going to wear this carbon tax, or whomever wins this thing for the Liberals? Are they going to wear this?
Well, I don't think they will the same as Trudeau would have. I do think there's a pivot point. And I think, whether one totally subscribes to Frank Graves' numbers or not, where he's showing a big shift, right? Like Eco's polling is showing a significant move in terms of people who are reconsidering voting Liberal. And according to his numbers, the distance now between the Conservatives and the Liberals in the polls is not very big at all. It's like, 5 points or something, whereas it was 20 something a month ago. And so, but, there are other polls that don't say that. I think having the leadership change and having the leaders, even though it seems like an obvious point, of course it's an obvious point to say this is a divisive issue. Well, Trudeau wasn't saying that. And so it's possible that Carney will be able to pivot a little bit, but the Conservatives will stay on him. They're going to keep going with this carbon tax, Carney, and they're going to come up with a whole bunch of videos and all that stuff of him saying positive things about a carbon tax and linking him to it. I think the complicating thing for the Conservatives in that respect is that the Trump factor is having the effect of creating a largely unwanted pivot point in this election, in this leadership race, where it's not just about Trudeau. Now there's this whole other narrative that's taking over. And so I think it's harder for the Conservatives to totally make that messaging stick because there's so much other noise in the picture.
And of course the tariffs. I mean, that's really sucking the air out of the balloon when it comes to everything pretty much at this point. This is priority one. We got to deal with this. And we've got a government in a state of flux. We got Melanie Joly doing her best, meeting with Marco Rubio again. I don't know how much authority Marco Rubio has to make any decisions on behalf of Donald Trump. But I guess a wounded, on the way out Liberal cabinet trying to battle Donald Trump, who's the exact opposite of that, just taken over, just at the apex of power and support in the United States. I mean, we could not be more disadvantaged when it comes to going into a trade war.
Pretty much, yeah. I mean, it's the last thing that we need is to have this leadership scramble, which I think is further incentivizing the premiers to speak for themselves because there's a vacuum at the federal level. And that's one of the reasons that you saw Doug Ford, like at that meeting a couple of weeks ago with the other premiers and the prime minister. He shows up with the Canada's Not For Sale hat, moving into that position of Captain Canada because Trudeau can't really take it at this point. I think with respect to what the other ministers are doing in their conversations down in the U.S., I mean, a lot of it is about trying to convince the rest of the people in the U.S. that this is a bad idea. So even if, I don't think that honestly speaking, even if Trudeau had a huge mandate from his party and he was up in the polls and he was going to go into the next election looking great, which is obviously not happening, but even if it was, I'm not sure Trump would care. I'm not sure Trump would listen. He hates Trudeau. And so I think what the ministers are trying to do is get through to people who might be able to get through to Trump on how a tariff war would hurt the Americans, not just us.
How much appetite do you think Canadians have for large programs, support programs, if in fact this does happen and we know that there's going to be layoffs and who gets the money? I mean, we saw so much waste out of the pandemic spending and haste-made waste, and they said we need to get the money out the door. I don't know. What do you think people's attitudes are towards all of this these types of programs at this point?
I think it'll be mixed. Yeah. I think that some people will say, thank God, because I don't know what else I'm going to do. Yeah. And if the government is not able to do something to stop the tariffs in the first place, then the government has to have our backs later. And then there are going to be other people who say, yeah, but we did that, during COVID, and the economy is still adjusting, right? And we're still looking backward, trying to figure that out. And how will we manage that? And what about the debt and the deficit that we're already putting up there, right? Like we already have a $60 billion deficit this year that they were going to try to keep it to $40 billion, and we're still paying massive amounts on our debt financing every year. And so seriously, like what are we going to do? How are we going to manage that? And what is it going to do to the economy more broadly? But I think, the messaging that we're getting is that the government is open to that kind of thing. And so then the politics of it are going to be around, what is Jagmeet Singh going to do? Is this going to be enough reason for Singh to say he's going to support the Liberals for a longer period of time, which could give a Prime Minister Carney, if that's the way this goes, more time to connect with people? I mean, it always goes back to politics, right? Like, I know that the question you asked me was about how people are going to react to it, but it's also, are politicians going to use this as a way to stick around longer if it means that they can get enough support, right? Will Carney be able to talk Singh into this? Will Singh go along with it? We shall see. Singh doesn't seem to be giving consistent answers. I don't know what he's talking about, to be really honest.
Well, let's suggest that for whatever reason, the March 9th or whenever they decide that they're going back, prorogue ends, and the government, and they broker a deal with the NDP and this trade battle's going on, and for whatever reason they decide to Singh changes his mind. I mean, God knows that can happen, and let's suggest that it does. Mark Carney can't sit in Parliament as the Prime Minister because he doesn't have a seat, obviously. So is that an advantage, Carney, to not have to take heat? We know Poilievre was just loving grilling Trudeau. I mean, it was the highlight of his day. You could tell every time he did it, and he's not going to have that opportunity to go after the current Prime Minister if, in fact, it's Mark Carney. Advantage anybody at that, or what are your thoughts?
To be perfectly honest, and I don't know this 100% because this is a whole bunch of ifs we've just stacked up, but I wouldn't imagine that they would spend a lot of time in the House. Like, I would think that what Carney would want is to come in. They have to come in by March 24th. Yeah. That's what's down there, like in terms of when prorogation comes to an end. They need to vote. If they're going to extend the sitting of the House, they need to vote on the money by March 26th. This stuff is not negotiable. So my guess is what Carney would want to do, if this is the plan, is to introduce the spending, the package on March 26th, the NDP support it, and then they all get the hell out of there. And because neither the Liberals nor the NDP has any interest in giving Poilievre a platform to start ripping anybody apart. So my guess is they get in, get out.
Yeah, and you look at Poilievre, he kind of looks like a lost puppy right now. I mean, he just looks like he's desperate to get back into the limelight, but he doesn't appear to be committing to anything really. He doesn't seem to have anything, because the wind is out of his sails a bit, because I don't think he wants to step on Trump's toes. He doesn't want to be seen as being too aggressive when it comes to tariffs. He doesn't seem to have a message right now. What are your thoughts on Poilievre?
Yeah, I agree with you. I think first of all, to state another obvious point, the last thing the Conservatives wanted, I think, was for Justin Trudeau to step aside. They have been gearing up for a fight with him for years, and they wanted Poilievre versus Trudeau. Like that was the plan. And so then when Trudeau stepped aside, their plan was to immediately pivot to making whoever is going to win the leadership another version of Trudeau. And again, if it weren't for the Trump fiasco, I think that might be more effective than it is now. Sure. But now there's more than, like, that's just not the conversation, at least not entirely. Trump is sucking the oxygen out of the room. The whole point now is, who can beat Poilievre so that they can get to a point where they can do something with Trump. And so Poilievre's ability to control the narrative seems to have been significantly undermined by the various turns of events.
Yeah, and you're suggesting that at least some polling is indicating that the Liberals are getting the bump that they traditionally, or anybody traditionally gets during a leadership convention or leadership race. Is that correct?
Yeah. I mean, some polls are saying that. We'll see if that pans out. We'll see if it lasts. If they are getting a bump, we'll see if there is some sort of coalescing around Carney. If this is what happens, I think the more time this goes by, it seems to me that Carney is the front runner. He's the guy to beat. A couple of weeks ago, we were talking about Freeland and Carney as front runners. Now I just don't see that in the same way, right? Like, it just seems to me that even with Jaime Batiste dropping out, supporting Carney, he's got so many endorsements. He's got endorsements aren't everything. It's not the whole thing. it's a one member, one vote system, but still there seems to be, he's the person at least who wasn't around the cabinet table. He can distance himself from Trudeau more effectively. We'll see, we'll see what happens. Now they're getting into the policy pieces, right? Because the membership sign up is done. Now they're appealing to the people who have signed up as registered Liberals. And so you can hear a little bit more from them, I think, from now on about what they'd actually do if they got the job.
Lori, always great. Appreciate it. Thank you, and we'll talk soon.
Have a good weekend.
All right, take care. Lori Turnbull, Dalhousie University political science professor. Now, what is on your mind? The way to reach us is 902-405-6000. Can you believe, folks, that we are on the precipice of war with the United States? A tariff war, but war nonetheless. I never thought that I would live to see this day. I really didn't. I mean, it's a sad moment in our history, in my opinion, that it's come to this. And all based on what? Donald Trump's bravado and false claims? I mean, basically that's what it is. Saying that fentanyl is pouring over the border in numbers that are far exaggerated and not empirically backed at all. Same as illegals or whatever terminology you want to use. I just think it's a sad, sad state of affair. And I hang my head in a bit of shame today, folks, to be honest with you. 902-405-6000. That's the way to reach us. Give us a call. 902-405-6000. Your calls when we come back.
Thanks.
All right, taking your calls, 902-405-6000. That is the way to reach us. Again, 902-405-6000. Did you ever think that you would live to see the day in which we would be at war again with the United States? Albeit not a military war, but a tariff war, an economic war. Economic force is being applied as of tomorrow. This is happening, folks. I see no way around it. I don't see how Trump backs out of it. Now he'll have a carve out for oil, of course, because politically that's advantageous for him to do so. But what are your thoughts on? This is, you would never envision this ever happening. Throughout my entire life, the United States and Canada have enjoyed a great relationship. Donald Trump claims that we have bilked the United States for billions of dollars with bad deals, and we've been very difficult to deal with, according to him. But the reality is that his reasoning for these tariffs are all greatly exaggerated when it comes to the numbers that he disseminates against fentanyl, about fentanyl, about illegal people crossing border, all of it. None of it is factual. None of it. Now, some people think that this is great. They say, here's Donald Trump. He's protecting American interests. And look, he's gotten action on the border and he's getting everybody's attention. Well, if that's the way that he's going to conduct himself, and if this is the new era of diplomacy, then we're in serious trouble, folks, in the next number of years. We are in serious trouble if this is now how two neighboring countries that have lived together symbiotically for well over a century, if this is the new norm, then we're in serious trouble. So I guess the question is, do you think that this is happening for sure? And what do you think our response should be as a government and as business? How do we respond to this? Because it's easy to say, let's go dollar for dollar tariff. Let's hit them back. Well, you know what that means? That means that you, the consumer, are going to pay more. If it's 25% coming this way, then you're going to pay. That's what it means. And adding to all of this, of course, now is there's a lot of talk about government's response and support and financial support. And who do they support? Who do they not support? And there'll be a rush for people to get money out the door and support businesses, and this could get very expensive very quickly. And we know that this has been problematic during COVID. So what are your thoughts on all of this, folks, or anything else that you'd like to talk about? Anyway, you can get into whatever you'd like. 902-405-6000. That is the way to reach us. Tim, hello.
Lauren, how are you?
Well, you?
Very good. Well, listen, on your comments in regards to what Trump will, or most likely will announce tomorrow, it was unfortunate that our premier decided to take yesterday off. I think that sends a terrible message, or the optics of that is terrible. Here we are, 1 million plus people in Nova Scotia, and we have a premier sitting at home doing whatever. And I'm not sure if he's taking this serious or not, but we'll see. We'll see what his plan is. And at the end of the day, Trump's going to do what Trump's going to do. I'm not sure. I've said it for a while that we're prepared. And if we're not, that's truly unfortunate, because I think there's going to be a lot of pain and suffering for some people. And not to be overly dramatic, but I'm not sure as Canadians, we're going to take this enough. Or what are we going to do? What can we do? We've got a partner that's 10 times our size. Mm-hmm. At the end of the day, I don't think we go dollar for dollar. I think that's a serious mistake, it's a serious miscalculation. But at the end of the day, I have less thoughts in the leadership in Canada right now than I've ever had. And that's truly unfortunate.
All right. So if we don't go dollar for dollar, what do we do? What do you think we should? How do you think we should retaliate?
Well, Todd, I honestly don't know. This guy is so unpredictable and so irrational. I don't believe a word he says. I don't think you can believe him. I think if you sit across from him and he smiles and shakes your hand, if you're going down and having want a photo op, that's great. But the moment you get up and walk away, he's changed his mind. Yeah. I don't know how you prepare for the unprepared, but at the end of the day, I feel bad for a lot of people, because I think when people truly understand the gravity of this and it starts to sink in, there'll be a lot of hurt in Canada. And again, I've said I hope I'm absolutely wrong, but that's truly unfortunate, because democracy's nice, but here we go.
Okay, thanks, Tim. Appreciate it. Take care. 902-405-6000. Mike, hello.
Good morning, Todd. How are you?
Well, you?
Good, thanks. I do concur with you. I think it's indeed a very sad day, sad period, which we're looking at right now with these imminent threats of tariffs. The last point, caller mentioned the matter of predictability. I think one has to look back only a few short years ago, probably 2017 or 2018, when Trump was bailing out so many farmers in U.S. soil because of the impact of those tariffs. It expanded over $1 billion of subsidies went to the tariffs, who were deeply impacted by the nature of these tariffs. And I will put it quite plainly, I feel, frankly, I'm not sure how you feel about this, that recognizing the fact that he could have learned from those lessons of the past, that by not doing so, by not adhering to the facts, and you raise the point that the amount of fentanyl coming in from Canada to the U.S. is not about what the numbers he's saying. So that's certainly erroneous, it's an error, and it has to be addressed. Is fentanyl a serious problem? Absolutely. But if he's not learning from the past, I think, frankly, he is abdicating full responsibility as a responsible leader. And if an open dialogue, either between Honorable Jolie or perhaps Marco Rubio would help in this matter, that would be. But it is a very sad period.
Well, I mean, look, as you were talking, I was thinking back to after 9/11, of course, and then George Bush and the justification to go into Iraq. Right. And the weapons of mass destruction, which didn't exist, which they said did exist, based on a lie to go to war. Well, listen, I'm not trying. I don't want to be hyperbolic here, and I'm not suggesting they're the same things. But here you've got the President of the United States claiming, and this is war. This is a tariff war. This is economic warfare. And he's basing it on information that is not accurate, not even close to being accurate. And I think that is a bad way to start anything. And there's a parallel, in my opinion, to that.
Yes, that's right. And no by way, diminishing the importance of dealing with the matter of fentanyl, because it's a highly critical problem, Canada and the U.S., and we've seen so many deaths from it. But also recognize the point that he doesn't recognize the point that he's saying, well, we don't need Canadian lumber. We don't need the oil and other exports. But he's not recognizing that the actual critical components, the inputs that go in from across the border, have a significant impact on the U.S. economy.
Absolutely, yeah. I'm sure. As he's saying that, importers and manufacturers and business people in the United States are saying, "Wait a minute, President. Yes, we do need those because we buy them every day, right?"
Absolutely, that's so true.
Yeah.
Listen, I know other people are waiting and want to put their comments in. I do appreciate your time, and we'll have to see what happens from here. But again, all we can do is hopefully sober, more reasonable heads will prevail in this.
Okay, thanks, Mike. Take care. 902-405-6000. And so, yeah, when he says things like that, saying we don't need your oil, we don't need your lumber, we don't need, yeah, well, you don't know that. I mean, this is somebody that just riffs things off the top of his head, and things that come into his mind, he spews them out. That's what we're dealing with here. If you're going to go to war with a country, a trade war, especially a country like Canada, in which we've been the best of partners for over a century, at least have your facts right and your facts straight before you go into it. But if you have to exaggerate and make things up to justify it, oh, and by the way, his base is going to believe whatever he says because anybody that contradicts it is just fake news and they're just horrible people anyway. I mean, this is a bad situation, folks. I don't know how anybody can justify what Trump's doing here. 902-405-6000. We'll continue with your calls when we come back. Continuing with your calls, 902-405-6000. That is the way to reach us. Again, 902-405-6000. Philip, hello.
How you doing, Todd?
Well, you?
Good. First-time caller.
Great, thank you.
Love your show.
Thank you.
And so I think Donald Trump is an evil man.
Tell me why.
Really do. Well, I mean, yesterday proved it even more to me when he was within the disaster there at the plane.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, a president should be looking to give out love and cherish to.
Yeah, the term is called consoler in chief, right? That's what people need at some point, is somebody to console them. And exactly. he offered none of that yesterday. Absolutely none of it.
No, I know. He just looked for blame. He was blaming the wrong people for sure.
Yep, absolutely. With no proof, no backing of any of it, just whatever comes out of his brain through his mouth. It's just unbelievable.
His advisors must be going crazy.
Yeah,
I truly don't think he cares either. That he's not going to get reelected. So he just I don't know what.
Well, don't be surprised if he. Well, first of all, he supposedly can't run again, but I would be shocked if he doesn't try and position himself so that he does try and run again. But I wouldn't say that he can't get reelected, because I would have said that 4 years ago. So there you go.
Well, I mean, I think he's an evil man. I mean, I can't say that enough. I mean, if I want to die a Canadian, believe me then when I say this. If we were to join the States, our money would be worth nothing.
Yeah, well, that's a conversation for way, way down the road. I mean, I don't know that this is going to come to that, but with Trump, you just never know. But anyway, Philip, thanks for the call. Call again.
Okay.
All right, take care. 902-405-6000. David, hello.
Hey, good morning. How are you?
Well, you?
Good. I'm just going to get off the Trump thing. I think it's rinse and repeat every day on the show, same old. And I like to talk about what's affecting us around here in HRM.
Well, in fairness, this is going to affect us pretty big time, David.
Well, it is, but we've been talking about it for day after day on your show, plus every guest that you have. So I think we need a day maybe just to talk about what's affecting us in HRM here. I think that's pretty important too. So I just think I'll take a day off the Trump wagon for a while.
Okay, go ahead. Go ahead.
Here. Anyway, yesterday he had the mayor on. He sounded like he was a little ticked off mayor. Maybe the gang down at the council is ganging up on him, but he didn't sound too impressed yesterday on your show. Maybe he's not liking what he sees, can't make any decisions, and that's a shame. I think the council's run by a group of boys down there, the boyhood, and maybe that's what's happening. I think maybe he should have some more I don't know right where Todd is power, but it just seemed like he's stuck in a corner, and the decisions are being made, and he's not having his opinion as a mayor. And I know that's not the mayor's role. He's just another councillor, I believe. Mm-hmm. But I think maybe he needs some more powers on huge decisions. Another thing is, I think an HRM here, as a taxpayer, a homeowner, our money, where is our money going? Where is our money? Like the fencing issue for $1.7 million, that was just ludicrous, Todd. And to go out with no tender.
The fencing was $780,000, not $1.75 million or whatever.
I'm sorry. Okay, that's still a huge number.
Yeah, it's a huge number. It's a huge number to rent fencing. It's a massive number.
Yeah, that's a massive number for your tax dollars to pay for and to go out without tender. Mm. So I guess my point in all this is that I think we got to look into HRM here and what the heck is going on and where all this money's going to. You know, it's like the Metro Center, Scotia Bank Center. We upgraded that for the facilities of the occupants in there, but the Halifax Moosehead's annual salary is $7.6 million a year. Mm-hmm. Did you know that? But yet, where our tax dollars are going into that facility to upgrade the occupants, $7.6 million annual salary per year. Mm-hmm. And we put tax dollars money into a clock, lighting, seating, our tax dollars into that building for them. So that's just two examples. The fencing, and I know you have counselors on the hot seat. I listen to your show when they come on. Yeah. And you have great questions to them. Sometimes they backtrack. Sometimes they don't have answers. But I'm getting a little ticked off here, watching the news, reading online here, especially the Coast has a lot of great posts on there of where our tax dollars money is going. And it's crazy. It's crazy. Like here in HRM, it's just like throwing money out the window. Well, here, just go take this and fix this up and do this and do that. Now we. Well,
look at the Windsor Street Exchange, in which you talked with the mayor trying to get that passed. But it was $50 million in 2019. It's now $150 million, and God knows where it'll ever end up. It'll probably end up being at least a quarter $1 billion project at some point to get that Windsor Street Exchange done, and that's a good example of who knows why, right?
Exactly, Todd. It's the same. It's the same as the Halifax Forum. It's under discussion now, but when it was in discussion, it was $95 million. These people are throwing around millions of dollars, Todd, like it's $100. Yeah, that's my point. And I'm really ticked off here, and you can hear from my voice because, I got my tax bill. I know what I pay. I know what goes out. I know what services I get here at HRM, and it's making me think, man, is it really worth living here? Is it really? Should I hunker down, get rid of this place, and move to the suburbs? Because it's costly, and I'm not getting nothing back. I'm not seeing anything. I'm paying money out to companies that, for instance, I don't use their services, or I don't go watch a hockey game, or whatever, or that I'm not getting anything back from. And just like you said, from $50 million, they say, oh, it's going up to $100 million. These people think $1 million is like $100. And where's it going to stop? Where is it going to stop here? And in closing, I'll say this. Mm-hmm. I know about the police. I know about what they ask for and so on and so forth. But look what's happening around our community with the shootings and the stabbings and so on and so forth. Like, what kind of resources? Like, what can we put into that to better our safety? That's just one issue. Mm. Instead of spending millions of dollars into an arena that a company makes $7.6 million.
Okay, David, thanks for the call. Appreciate it. Take care.
Thank you.
Okay, 902-405-6000. Jeremy, hello.
How you doing, Todd?
Well, you?
Good. I want to backtrack. It is in the vein of Trump, but a couple of weeks ago I called in and I sort of took issue with the fact that he was loading his administration with people who subscribe to the same ideology. And I think the next caller, Chris, called in and said, well, kind of sort of nonchalantly said, oh, that's normal. every administration that's newly elected does that. And I would agree with him on that. But I think we're starting to see the chickens come home to roost here about all the stuff that's not normal when you start to load your establishment with people who share the complete disregard for the rule of law and the fact that they can make up whatever reality they want to, right? And that's what he has done here now. So that was, I think, the broader point that I was trying to make a couple of weeks ago, to sort of answer what Chris had to say about that, was that, sure, it's normal for, governments to put into power other people that are going to help push their policies through. What's not normal is to have so many people that are willing to push policies through that are completely not based in fact or truth, right? I mean, that's the danger here. And I think, we've talked about it on the show, and you've said, the policy decisions that he's making and moving forward with are completely not based in fact, and they're not. And it doesn't take any amount of time to go online and find reputable news agencies publishing, stories about lie after lie after lie after lie that's being told in real time, right? Let's talk about the gigantic, enormous spigot that he supposedly had the military turn on in California. Complete falsehood. But guess what? There's no, like you said, I think the saying is, don't waste a tragedy, right? There, he's playing to that tragedy of the wildfires in California. Yesterday, when he made comment about how the tragedy in Washington, the plane crash, has somehow been tied to Biden's administration and DEI policy. Give me a break. It's so insulting for the people.
And so tone deaf to say it the day of.
Right.
Unbelievable.
But I mean, for people who are now sitting here saying, "Oh my gosh, this is shocking. I can't believe this." There have been people sounding this trumpet for 8 years now, since the first time he was elected, saying this man is not fit for office, couldn't tell the truth if you paid him, whatever you wanted to pay him. So it's no surprise. It's still terrible and it's saddening. And I think this tariff threat, if it becomes reality tomorrow, we're in for some real hurt. But I also think, and I've said it before in the program, I think we're not going to be the only ones internationally. Trump has already sent off a letter to 10 other countries saying, find somebody else to take advantage of. So I think on the world scale, I think there is a real opportunity to look for other markets, to find new allies who will suffer some of the same, policy changes through the states, but they can become our allies. And I think there are ways to make it hurt in a way that, changes Donald Trump's tack. But I think that's it. Yeah.
Okay. Thanks, Jeremy. Appreciate the call.
Yeah.
Take care. 902-405-6000. We'll continue with your calls when we come back. All right, 902-405-6000. Look, it'd be one thing if you had the President of the United States come in and say, look, I have some challenges, which I think requires some attention here. And these are the facts as can be properly vetted and agreed upon when it comes to the border, fentanyl, whatever it is. But the fact that Donald Trump just kind of runs his mouth off and spews things without any empirical data to back up what he's saying, and that is the justification for going to war with a country, and a trade war can be just as devastating, if not more so, than a military war. Obviously, they're two different things, but you get my point. I mean, this is serious stuff. Who would have ever thought that the incoming president of the United States on day one signs into an executive order and then a week later is going to impose a 25% tariff across the board on all imports from this country, Canada? You would never have thought that this would even be possible. And it's just, what's the response? Well, who knows? Who knows what the right response is going to be? Dollar for dollar tariff? Do we cut power into the United States? I don't know that we want to go down that road. It's just unbelievable. And it's a sad, sad day. As a Canadian, as somebody who is at 55 years old, enjoyed a a good life when it comes to the United States, and always considered the United States to be our biggest partner, and always have been our biggest partner, and proud to be associated with the United States. We share so much culturally. But this is a point of shame, in my opinion, that it's come to this. And for Trump to say that Canada's always given the United States a bad deal and a raw deal, and they've subsidized us for billions and billions, none of that stuff is accurate, folks. It's not accurate. That's not how trade works. A trade deficit does not mean that you're subsidizing us. It doesn't even make any sense. So what are your thoughts on all of this, folks? Where do you think this goes? How should the government respond? Just thoughts in general, or whatever else you'd like to get into. 902-405-6000. Vince, hello.
Hey, how you doing, Todd? Great to be on your show.
Thank you.
No, I mean, I agree with what you just said. I mean, it's sad. His name fits it, doesn't it? I mean, he's Trump democracy. He's Trump dignity. He's Trump honesty. He's Trump everything that we expect from a politician. And just coming out of the States, the media seems quiet at this time from a man who tried to take over democracy in 2020. But, I mean, he did say he's going to take Canada by economic force.
Yeah.
And for us to enter a trade war, we're going to hurt.
Yeah.
But, I don't see... That's what he wants. He's crazy. And it's just, it's a crazy man is running the most powerful economy in the world. I mean, it's leaps and bounds ahead of us. It's like picking on the biggest bully, and we're the smallest guy. And we're not even hearing from our other people for support. So I remember my father passed away last year, and I'm kind of glad he passed away before Trump got back in, because that probably would have killed him earlier. But
yeah.
It's unbelievable. I mean, I'm sure his advisors are telling him, Canada's in a mess. The politicians, they're over the place. It's working. Keep it up.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I'm just hearing him whenever I hear him talk, like you said, it's just whatever floats by his brain, he'll say.
Yeah, that's true.
There's no logic. I mean, how are we going to deal with this, man? How is the world going to deal with this guy? And we're not the only ones, but he said he wants Canada, so that's something we got to. Are we going down a rabbit hole that he's digging for us? I don't know.
Yeah,
we just got to be careful how we respond with tariffs, I think.
Okay, Vince, thanks for the call. Take care. 902-405-6000. How do we respond? That's the big question, right? How do we respond? Jeff, hello.
Yes, good morning. I couldn't agree with you more in regard to your comments. I can't believe that such an important position in America, and they have a convicted felon who is untouchable. I question his mental capacity. He's of the age he should be home spending time with the grandkids, not becoming or is a dictator or potentially dangerous at that. And also, what message does he send out to the young generation that he's awarded for bad behavior?
Yeah.
I can't. There's so much I could say in such little amount of time, but I'm disgusted. I have no further interest in traveling to the States, to be very honest with you. I have met great Americans, but I honestly believe this time the Americans got it wrong.
Well, I mean, it's pretty evident that, Jeff, that they did. It's pretty evident. It's hard. I don't know how you support. I don't know how anybody looking at this could support what Trump has done. I mean, again, let's say that he felt validated in going to war with Canada over this. All happened. Quite honestly, let's go back to where this all started. This all started when Trump was when Trudeau and his entourage went to Mar-a-Lago and they visited Trump and his team. This is where this all started. This first musing of a 25% tariff came out of his mouth. And I think it just snowballed from there. I think he said it. I think he liked it. It got attention. People talked about it online, and he just ran with it. And it's not based on any policy. It's not based on anything other than just the musings of a person who is out of touch with reality, who is obviously delusional at this point.
It saddens me to say that during travel abroad, on cruise ships. I've met wonderful Americans who we kept in contact, and until the conversation was about Trump, and the conversation diminished to the point where it just expired. There was no ill intent on my part. I was just being truthful and honest how I felt, but you cannot say anything about him. And the Americans don't see that the potential of being a dictator, and he befriends those who are a threat to democracy. It just, Bob, I can't believe it. Mm-hmm. I'm older than you, and I'm in awe. Mm-hmm. So about where society is, where's our future? It's going to be a long 4 years.
Yep.
Thank you very much for your time.
All right, take care. All right, 902-405-6000. Look, and I try and view things from as many different angles as I can. I do. But it's hard to support Trump in any way when it comes to this. Some people out there listening might say, well, he's just protecting American interests. Well, this isn't the way you go about it, folks. You have a responsibility as a world leader and somebody in this position, and you have a responsibility to conduct yourself with some level of diplomacy. In my opinion, you have a fiduciary responsibility to do so. And this is reckless. This is not based on anything other than just the whims of a rational human being. And that's my takeaway. I don't know how else you can describe it. I'm not sure how you can defend this. 902-405-6000. Look, if you've got issues with the trade agreements that you have in place with Canada, okay, that's fair. I don't have an issue with that. You can say, look, I think that we've been getting a bad deal through the new NAFTA or whatever. Well, you take steps and you take measures in order to deal with that. You don't simply use a blunt instrument of an executive order on Inauguration Day and on a week later impose a 25% tariff across the board on everything imported from this country. To me, that is not an act of a sane human being, a thinking, diplomatic, forward-thinking politician. That is not the hallmark of somebody like that. That is the trademark of somebody who's petulant, who's unpredictable, and who's out of control, in my opinion. I don't know how else you'd describe it. 902-405-6000. Dave, hello.
Yes, good morning, Todd. You will never have a dull moment for the next 4 years on your radio show. I'll tell you.
Yeah.
As long as Trump is in business, you're going to be fine. And that's going to benefit you to a certain degree because although I don't think you have a lot of void times on air anyways, I think you're very popular. But
thank you, sir.
I'd like to get down. I'd like to talk about just local stuff. Like I think you had David on, and he was talking about the wasted tax. Now, you had the health minister on, I believe. Nova Scotia
earlier in the show, yes.
20 million, or up from 12 million to 20 million for security annually.
Yeah. For
these hospitals in Nova Scotia. I don't know how many hospitals we have. I don't know how many entrances there are in hospitals, but I think down here there may be one or two. You got emergency, and otherwise there's no way in. And you know, goodness me, we can't be having. I mean, it sounds like Chicago or New York. What's going on here? L.A. These hospitals, somebody getting in there. Did somebody actually get in with a knife, or did they take some equipment and start wailing around? I didn't quite get
I'm not sure. I don't know the details.
And I just checked up what and like this should not happen. And security is very important, of course, and it's going to have to be up. This should not have happened. I mean, if you're spending $12 million to $20 million, up from $20 million, and $7 million, I think, was given to the union or whatever to train employees how to deal with certain security things, right? So that's another $7 million. An average metal detector, handheld, what I've looked up is around $500. You can get a good one for $500. So if you had a security guard or whatever, I mean, how do schools do it here? Did we not have metal detectors put in schools when there was an incident or something? How did they go about it? It can't be that difficult. I'm sure a lot of money was put towards cameras and whatever, but they've been there forever. And besides, you can go in anywhere with a mask and a hoodie on. Nobody is going to check your facial. But $12 to $20 million in security annually They got to do a better job, and that's our tax money right there.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm thinking, holy smokes, that's it. And they're still getting in and doing this, and it's only going to get worse, I would imagine, because there's a lot of deranged people out there. Unfortunately, we're all stressed out, and I know you're talking about, people talk about this and that. Well, maybe we're taxed to death up here as well. If you think of it, we're all very frustrated. And take a look how much tax you pay in this country. That's the thing we need to be worried about. Yes, this 25%, it'll all settle, hopefully, and it's not nice, but business as usual, unfortunately. But take a look at the tax we pay, and then they want all these programs, Todd, and we have to pay things like this with security at the hospital. Like, where is that money going? $20 million for security, and that happened. Anyways, I'll hang up and listen to your reaction possibly. Thanks, Todd.
Okay, thanks, Dave. All right, take care. 902-405-6000. We'll continue with your calls when we come back. All right, continuing with your calls, 902-405-6000. Terry, hello.
Hello.
Hi there.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I got you.
Okay. I just wanted to, I listened to a very interesting segment today on CBC Radio, and everybody is being distracted by this shiny 25% tariff bauble that Trump and his cronies are dangling in front of Canada. Now, what Trump is really after is water, Canada's water. And he declared this in 2017. He told California that he would get them water at whatever cost from whatever source. And this morning I learned that the Premier of Alberta has been meeting with Trump, and I don't know what other minister was talking with Trump, but they're dealing. Trump said yesterday oil is going to be exempt from this tariff.
Mm-hmm.
Now, this is tying in to the meeting that this Premier of Alberta had with Trump, and they're doing a deal to send water down to south of the border. Now, this is very alarming, and this is just under the radar right now, but that is what Trump is after, our water. And I hope there's people in charge who are not being distracted by this 25% tariff, and they are going to take action against this Premier of Alberta and those conservatives out there, and because they're doing a deal to divert water down to the States to avoid the tariffs on this oil. And it was very interesting that Trump mentioned yesterday that oil would probably be exempt from this tariff. So it's a dangerous time for Canada because this man will stop at nothing.
Okay, Terry, interesting. Thanks for the call. Appreciate it. Take care. 902-405-6000. John, hello.
Good day, Todd. Just a couple things.
Sure.
I'd just like to throw out there. I guess with Mr. Trump below the border, it has triggered a lot of thinking here in Canada. And what I'm wondering is, I'm hoping that it will make people do a lot of deep thinking about what we are as a country. We're very, very separated, whether it's from provinces or people. And it would be nice if we could hear from some of the Canadians that live down south for 6 months a year, come back up here for 6 months a year so they can retain their medical benefits and have homes up here, and what their feelings are. Because, Todd, one thing that disturbs me about what is going on is that where Canada is so generous to the rest of the world when they're in trouble, I haven't heard a peep on any news station about another country sort of sticking up for Canada. And Todd, Trump is isolating the United States from the rest of the world, in my opinion, the way this is going. I worked internationally with Americans back in the 80s, and when we were in another country going ashore, they would ask me, do you have one of your T-shirts with the Canadian flag on it? I'd like to have it for the day. So if I was an American who actually worked outside the U.S., I think I'd be speaking up. And plus the Canadians that are down there benefiting from the higher wages and lower taxes, and still remain Canadians for 6 months a year. Anyway, I think that's all I got to say. There's a few things for people to think about, mainly being united as a country and not each province looking after itself as we sort of are seeing with Alberta.
Okay, John. Appreciate the call. Take care. 902-405-6000. Fred, hello. Hi, Fred.
It's Brett.
Okay, Brett, go ahead.
When it comes to Donald Trump, when he first talked about the tariffs, he said the Canadian government had to straighten out the border so that we didn't have a bunch of the people traveling back and forth. And I know the government came up with a proposal and they sent some information, but they're still proroguing. They haven't pulled their stuff together. They didn't make the border safe. They didn't do what they were supposed to do. So he stood by what he said he was going to do. I mean, what else is he supposed to do? I mean, we sent that clown down there. Well, we didn't send him. Justin Trudeau went down, and that was almost an insult for him to show up down there because he has no real power to do anything. You know, we got to pull our stuff together. Canada's broke. The U.S. is broke too, but we're broke. We can't afford to send money elsewhere, and Donald Trump knows they're broke. He's going to do what he can to protect their assets and their lives.
Is that what he's doing? Is that, Fred, is that really what he's doing? Is protecting American assets and American lives? Do you really think that that's what he's doing? Or is this just some personal vendetta that he came up with and you say that he's justified in doing this? How do you justify treating a partner, your partner of Canada that you shared a border with for well over 100 years and had diplomatic relations with, and all that we've shared, and all of that their economies are intertwined? How do you really, is this really the way that you would like to see the President of the United States treating this country? Really? You justify that?
No, I didn't say I agreed with it. I'm just saying he stuck with what he said he was going to do. Us as Canadians, our government didn't do what they were supposed to do.
Which is what? What didn't we do?
The U.S. has been taking care of us for a long time.
What did we not do?
What did we do to secure our border to allow illegals to travel back and forth?
You don't even know. You don't even know how bad is the problem. Where are you getting your data? Is it a problem? Do you think it's a problem because Donald Trump has told you it's a problem?
Well, we've seen it was a problem. There's an app that you can go on and look, and it tells you where the illegals have come across, or at least where they know.
Yeah, Fred, you're always going to have some activity of people moving across the border that you shouldn't. You're always going to have some level of narcotics and drugs crossing a border, especially a border the size of Canada and the United States. You're going to have some of that. But the reality is this. Is there any proof that it comes anywhere close to what Donald Trump says that it is to justify this? Not even close. And also, he says that the United States has been subsidizing Canada to the tune of billions and billions of dollars. None of that is proven. None of that is true. None of that is factual. That is all just rhetoric is what it is. So all my point, Fred, is that if you're going to pick a fight with us, do it at least on a factual basis, not just hyperbolic comments that you have no substance or nothing to back it up.
Well, I do believe that we've got to somehow stop all the illegal stuff that's coming through.
Well, you're never going to stop it all, Fred. You're never going to stop it all. You're always going to have some of that. Always.
Got to put an effort in, though, like a better effort than what we are.
How do you know we're not putting a good effort into it? I'm going to let you go. I'm up against. The reality is this, and I'm up against a break, so I got to go. But it's pretty evident that the justification that Trump has used for this war, this trade war, and it is a war, has been greatly, greatly exaggerated, if not completely made up and totally fabricated. I think that's, in my opinion, that's what's going on here. And that's a sad state of affair. Gar Pardy when we come back. All right, joining us for a chat, Gar Pardy, former diplomat, columnist, author. Gar, thanks for joining the show.
Good morning, Todd.
All right, so here we go with you talk about diplomats and diplomacy. This is the antithesis of diplomacy. This is a war footing that we're really seeing out of the United States and Donald Trump right now, an economic war footing, but a war footing nonetheless. What are your thoughts?
Oh, I would agree with everything that you just said. The problems then start arising. What do you do about it? And that's where diplomats, hopefully, will still have a role to play here, or certainly intermediaries of one sort or another. The complexities that I think we're facing, these are very early days after an election in which Mr. Trump and the Republican Party did very well. And really, there's no distinction between Mr. Trump and the Republican Party. He owns that party. He has a fair degree of, I would say, more than a majority support in the United States in a general sense that support what he's trying to do. But I think where the difficulties will start coming up for him, and they're already starting to show up in terms of some of his actions with regards to, I think, birthright, and then the cancelling of a whole bunch of social programs financed by the federal government. The courts have intervened and just says now, just a second here, just back up. The trade issue itself is of a different category. While there is a trade agreement, of course, that involves Canada, the United States, and it. The current version was signed only 4 or 5 years ago, and Mr. Trump was involved in the negotiations of that particular treaty. The problems you run into that there are really no sanctions built into that treaty that can be used effectively here. The most effective one is what I think the government is about right now, is that if he does do a generalized tariff, then we will strike back as well with any number of specific products that we will put tariffs on, American products, that is, coming into Canada. The other side of all of this is that Canada, the sheer size of Canada-U.S. trade, we are still the biggest trade partner with the United States, and most of the products that go into the United States go in there at a price that the Americans they like. Any change, the implementation of tariffs, and particularly at the 25% level on those kinds of products, will have a fairly immediate effect on prices in the United States, which the Americans still have some sort of an inflationary problem, probably not as great as it was a few years ago, but there is going to be costs for the American consumer in this particular policy. How that will play out in the near term is really what the issue is, and how steadfast the Canadian authorities will be in responding to the tariffs that I think everybody will agree that are coming at us, whether that's tomorrow or whether that will be the 1st of April. So we're still in a bit of a waiting game, but there is a lot of work that will have to be done in the near term, and most of it is based on, at this point, on uncertainty of what Trump and his people are going to do. Is it going to be a generalized tariff right across the board on all products going into the United States from Canada, or will it be subject-specific? And the one big issue here is still being rumored about is the export of Canadian oil and gas into the United States. We represent 60% of all of the oil and gas that goes into the United States from other countries. And even Mr. Trump is sort of hesitating here in terms of the sheer value of that, and our inability to use that oil and gas as one of the levers is somewhat suspect, because I think Alberta, the Premier of Alberta, has certainly indicated she does not want to see any controls placed on the ability of Alberta to export oil into the United States.
All right. So when it comes to, I guess, appeasing Donald Trump, we've spent money at the border. The RCMP is stepped up patrols at the border, employing helicopters, whatever it might be. Melanie Joly's made her case, or is making her case to Marco Rubio about all of this. Does any of this matter at this point, or is Trump going to do this? Do you think, is he hell bent on doing this, at least for the short term, at the very least?
Yeah, your earlier reference, the need for diplomats. I think at this point, the need for psychologists and psychiatrists there in your armory, I think is what is probably needed. I think the key thing, and Canada has practiced this approach to the United States, it's not really front and center, but really historically, if we've had problems with the Americans on trade or economic issues, you do not solve them in Washington. You solve them throughout the United States. You go to see other people who play a role in all of this, the states themselves. And we have played that role very effectively in the United States in terms of doing that. This time round, Trump, we've had 4 years of experience with him, and not so many years ago. Once you get down at the table and start sort of knocking heads together, you end up with some sort of a reasonable deal here. He's not that impossible. It's not an impossibility here. But at this stage where Trump is, where I think retribution and revenge, I think, are guiding principles for this man more than the economic well-being of the United States, I think, is something that is extremely difficult to measure. And what is difficult as well, there are no countervailing forces that have manifested themselves in the United States itself against Trump yet. Those will come, but how soon they will come will be the issue as to, how much of a price we're going to pay this time round.
Well, and the other thing is that he's at the absolute apex of his power. He's just been inaugurated. He's got 4 years ahead of him. He doesn't have to worry about re-election. The midterms are 2 years away. I mean, this is a guy who is unfettered at this point and untethered by anything right now, it seems. And that's a challenge, is it not?
Yeah, absolutely. And two other elements in the possible countervailing forces, of course, are the courts and the Congress. Already one of Trump's initial actions was to fire a whole bunch of lawyers over at the Department of Justice. Well, we all remember what Shakespeare had to say about that kind of action when he said that if you are planning big crimes, your first action should be to fire the lawyers or kill the lawyers. Well, that process is underway as far as Trump is concerned, and certainly is stacking at the Supreme Court during his previous time in office has given the slant of that Supreme Court. Really, they are Trump supporters in a majority sense, in every sense of the word. So those kinds of avenues of appeal are not available at this point. But I think the key thing is that there's going to be a need for patience and steadfastness on the part of our reaction here. And that is somewhat evident. There's nobody, there's a bit of screaming going on at the edges. But if we start screaming at ourselves here, boy, that's not going to be helpful here. Let's see what actually happens that's going to be injurious to us, and then that's when we come up with our action that we think is going to be painful for. And the more you can make this painful for Donald Trump, the more likely that you're going to succeed here.
And what do you think the appetite will be for economic support here in this country for businesses and workers impacted?
Oh, I think, again, you're going to need a whole bunch of programs. And to some extent, we went through this exercise, you remember, a few years ago, again with Trump, when he slapped large tariffs on aluminum and steel imports from Canada. Well, those industries needed a lot of help, and which we have provided them. And if you go back a little earlier to 2008, when we had the other economic crisis, which was a broader one in terms of it was more global, but involved the car industry. And in terms of There's a need for a lot of government money to go into those industries. And of course, when it goes into those industries, it goes to the workers in those industries. And that's the key element here in our response. We've got to make sure that Canadians are not devastated by these actions. And that can only be ameliorated by money from the government.
Gar, always great insight. Thanks for doing this, and we'll talk again soon.
You're quite welcome, Todd, and all the best.
All right, take care. Gar Pardy, former diplomat and columnist and author. Minimum wage is on the way up, and CFIB has called it a gut punch. That when we come back. All right, joining me here in studio is Duncan Robertson, Senior Policy Analyst for Nova Scotia at the Canadian Federation of Independent Business. Duncan, thanks for joining the show. We appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. Good to be chatting again.
All right. So where do we start? Well, let's start with the minimum wage. The minimum wage is going up to $16.50 an hour. When all is said and done, there's going to be a couple of increases. What's your response to that?
Well, particularly for some small businesses, retail, hospitality with thin margins, it is going to be difficult. The term gut punch has been thrown around a little bit, but look, government has, they did increase the frequency of increases to get to $15 an hour, and then after that, they said it would be increased at CPI plus 1%. But it seems like just a year later, we're changing that and we're abandoning that choice, and so it's hard for businesses to plan. Minimum wage has to be predictable and sustainable, and based on economic factors as well. Understanding CPI is somewhat reflective of what's going on out there, but the increase in October, we're not totally sure the methodology behind that. We want government to put forward their economic indicators they're using, because it can't be a political football, because it just makes it that much more difficult to plan for small businesses.
You think that's what it has been, is a political football?
Well, look, it was a platform promise, but again, we hope that was based on an economic information. But again, we have not received that. We don't know the basis on what this increase is based on. Understanding that the increase to $15.70 is out of a recommendation from the Minimum Wage Review Committee based on CPI plus 1%, but it's that October increase that we're still unsure of.
Okay, and look, unfortunately, a lot of this just gets passed on to consumers, right? That's the way it is.
Yeah, in previous increases, around 6 in 10 of our members, they didn't have the ability to absorb these costs and have had to pass it on to consumers. Now, if you think about large businesses, multinational businesses, they can absorb this quite easily and won't have to increase prices. So it makes it that much more difficult as well for those struggling small businesses to be able to compete. And we really need to consider that if government's going to increase costs one way, they need to decrease costs in another. Things like the small business tax rate, the provincial fuel tax, ensuring that payroll tax like WCB premiums are going in a downward direction. So it's important for them to really take a holistic view of this.
All right. Is there pressure as well if you're a business owner, if you're a small business owner and say you've got 10, 15 employees and you've got a group of people who are making minimum wage, probably your newest hires likely, and you've got some people who maybe work in a shop or who've got some experience and they're making $18, $19 an hour. Is there not pressure, I would think, that for those people to give them an increase as well?
It's only natural for this to reflect up the wage scale, so we do see that happening. Yeah. But let me be very clear as well. Small business owners, if they can pay over minimum wage, they are, just to be competitive in the labor market, to attract that labor. But it's those businesses who simply can't because they don't have the financial ability, particularly looking at sectors who were hit the hardest during the pandemic, retail, hospitality, again, these are areas we have to look at and really consider those impacts. And again, making sure that there are reducing costs so small businesses can keep up as well, and ensuring, again, that minimum wage is set in a clear, transparent way.
All right, let's talk about red tape. Some good news here when it comes to reduction of red tape. A report card is out, and not a bad A- grade for Nova Scotia, correct?
Yeah, no, when we look at red tape particularly, the province is a leader in Atlantic Canada, but also, across Canada as well. And this has to do, the secret sauce, I like to say, behind this is the Office of Service Efficiency. They are, full-time employees focused on addressing red tape. They recently worked on physician burden, administrative burden that physicians face. We, celebrated that as well. But look, it's great. Also to see now a minister in charge of that portfolio. Met with the Honourable Tim Holman yesterday. A great conversation, very productive. So hopefully seeing some improvements as well. We want to get them to that A, beat out Alberta. That would be good to see, and ensure that Nova Scotia is really open for business.
How much does red tape impact? Give me some examples of what red tape is.
Absolutely. When we look at regulations in general, if we think of that as 100%, our members say around 35% of that is red tape. So that's things that we can cut without, impacting public safety, for instance.
Mm-hmm.
There's some clear examples across Canada. For instance, in Quebec, there's a town where if you're a child and want to play outside, you have to go door to door to get a form signed by your neighbors to let you do that.
Wow.
There are dog parks in Toronto that are banned for commercial dog walkers. So if you're a 13-year-old trying to make a buck or two, can't do that. Then looking at a larger scale, of course, there's that HST holiday that really impacted a lot of business owners, took them away from focusing on their business at their most busy time of year, forcing them to go line by line through their inventory and decide if a certain good fit the over litigious kind of definition by CRA. For instance, Lego was exempt, but not adult Lego. I did not know there was a difference, but it seems like there was.
Okay, so when it comes to reducing red tape and these types of things, who moves the needle with it? Is it businesses pushing government? Is it government listening to businesses? How does this work? How do we make progress?
Well, it's definitely a two-way street. We need government to be clear and communicate with us, but we're also communicating with them. When we think of taxation and government spending, there are oversight boards for that. There's the PBO nationally. There's the Office of the Attorney General here, but there's no real organization looking at how governments regulate. And that's really where we step in to ensure that government is focused. And I mean, if we look at Nova Scotia, we've worked very closely with them. And 10 years ago, they got a D- on our report card, and now they're in an A-. So there's some good momentum there. And since 2021, the Office of Service Efficiency saved businesses around $21 million of reducing red tape. So that is significant, and just need to have a good partner. We're lucky we do have one in Nova Scotia. Other provinces aren't so lucky, but we really want to see other provinces really reflect what's being done in Nova Scotia, Alberta, Ontario, and really benefit all businesses.
Okay, before I run out of time, quickly on this tariff thing, tomorrow's fast approaching, and I'm sure that many of your members are talking about this, right? What are some concerns you're hearing?
Well, there's a lot of uncertainty, particularly too when we look across Canada. Around half of our members import or export, so there will be some impacts there. And the major issue is if we have a weaker loonie, what's that going to do to the cost of doing business in our overall economy? Will prices have to go up? Will there be that inventory and inputs that small businesses really need and import from the States? So we are waiting for that deadline on February 1st. Hopefully nothing happens, but again, it looks like government's preparing for the worst, which is good to see. And we also want to see that government is ensuring that they're being partners with small businesses. They have their backs during this difficult time, and we'll see in the next few days.
So you say have their backs. So what's that mean by way of potential support, financial support?
There will be revenue raised if there are tariffs raised in counter tariffs in Canada. So ensuring that that's used, of course, to support small businesses and workers, etc. They definitely had small businesses back during the pandemic. I hope it's not as bad as an economic situation as it was back then, but ensuring that they are focused on that. We've heard from the province and the feds that business supports are on the table, which is good to see.
Yeah, for sure. And I guess we'll all hold our breath. And I would think, logistically speaking, it would be a bit of a nightmare for many of your members, would it not?
Yeah, and we're hearing from some members who export that some of their consumers are just holding off on buying. They're waiting to see if these tariffs happen. So that's impacting their supply chain as well. So it's it is having an impact for small businesses.
Delivery and all that stuff. Yeah,
exactly. And the larger sectors are also concerned, but a lot of small businesses service these sectors, particularly in Nova Scotia. So there is going to be an impact across our economy. So it's important to really consider and having the backs of our businesses, which we hope they will.
Yeah, okay. Duncan, I'll have your boss, Dan Kelly, on the show on Friday, or on Monday, rather. He's your boss, is he not?
Yeah. He's my boss. He's a great guy, good conversations. I'm sure he'll always be good as usual.
Absolutely, and we'll have you back in as well very soon. Thank you, Duncan.
Can't wait. Thank you.
All right, Duncan Robertson, Senior Policy Analyst for Nova Scotia at the Canadian Federation of Independent Business. Allister Allders and sports, all that in the next half hour. We'll be back.
Thanks.
All right, I promise you folks, for this next segment, I will not mention Donald Trump or tariffs. There you go. How's that sound, Allister Allders?
We'll talk all about the weather.
That's right. None of this is Donald Trump's fault.
No,
this weather.
Not at all.
How about we give them 25% back of their weather that comes this way?
Yeah, I mean all those weather systems. Texas lows, Colorado lows.
Yeah, they can have 25% of that back. What do you think?
They can take the weather back.
Sure.
We'll keep our Alberta Clippers.
There you go. All right, Allister Allders, of course, is our weather specialist. and joins us each and every Friday to talk about the weekend weather and some other interesting fun factoids that come up from time to time. And one fun factoid that I just learned about Allister Allders is that he does not drink coffee, which is strange for somebody who's worked in radio, quite honestly. I don't think I've known anybody who's that has not drank coffee that worked in radio.
I don't know how I do it, honestly. Sometimes I think I should start because those early mornings can be a little brutal sometimes, but so far, so good.
So good. That's right.
Might as well keep going.
Might as well keep going. That's right. All right. And think of the money that you save in not drinking coffee.
Exactly, right? A couple dollars
every
least,
day.
If you're drinking just one cup of coffee, right?
That's right. Exactly. All right. So let's talk a bit about, first of all, let's talk about the week that was weather-wise.
A little busy.
Yeah. We had some snow and quite a bit of more snow than I was expecting on Wednesday or Tuesday and Wednesday, really, a couple of days, right?
Yeah, we had, the first, I guess, the appetizer, if you will, that moved in on Tuesday with really wasn't a lot of snow. It was only a couple of centimeters, but, it was very squall-like where, the weather was fine and generally clear, but then conditions just deteriorated and we had, very intense snowfall for a couple of hours. I mean, like I said, it didn't amount to a whole lot of snow, but it obviously caused a lot of problems for that commute home and even the commute Wednesday morning because, we first had, it was a wetter snow, so the roads were wet and then the squalls came and the temperatures cooled and everything just turned over to ice. So it was really not a great drive home on Tuesday and even Wednesday morning, it was still pretty bad. Now, then we had the other system move in on Wednesday and I believe amounts generally were in the near 10 centimeter range for the Halifax area. Parts of the province did get closer to 15 and even 20 centimeters, and that's because it was on the fluffier side because it was a bit colder, easier for it to accumulate. So, January, we didn't have a lot of snow in January. In fact, it was looking like we would finish possibly in close to being one of the least snowiest Januaries on record in the Halifax area, but obviously we've made up for that with the 2 rounds of snow that we had earlier in the week, and also we're getting a bit of snow today and tonight.
Yeah, absolutely. And cold.
Oh, the wind yesterday, that was
right through you.
Oh, and especially, it's blowing the snow and the ice around. It was biting. And we've had some bitter cold mornings and some bitter cold days. But I think, yesterday the winds were just relentless all day. It wasn't like we had that relief in the morning or the afternoon. The winds just were constant all day, keeping the wind chill in the -20. So it was not nice out yesterday, that's for sure, despite the peaks of sunshine that we did have.
What's the average daytime high usually this time of year?
Around this time of year, it's usually around -1 or 0.
Yeah.
So, sometimes that surprises people because people often think it should be colder.
Yeah.
Average is -1.
Yeah.
Certainly, we do get into colder snaps of weather in January and February. But yeah, generally -1 for the daytime high and near -10 for the overnight low is average for late January.
Yeah, and our guaranteed high, you've not missed that yet, have you?
No, it's now over $3,000. Yeah. So hoping we can keep building that up. Certainly with the roller coaster ride of temperatures, it makes it a little not challenging, but you have to obviously have to keep always a very close eye on weather forecasting, but you have to really analyze when temperatures are rising and falling because, if you are predicting a high, but it's going to happen late in the day or before sunrise, you have to take all that into account too to make sure that you don't miss it because the climate day is a little strange in Nova Scotia where it resets at 2 a.m. Instead of midnight. So you have to keep a very close eye on it, and it's a fun challenge, and I'm really hoping we can keep it going. It's, I believe, $3,050 now.
Nice,
so it'd be nice to keep that going. Maybe get up to 4 at least or 5,000. Hopefully,
indeed. And the next couple of days, the weather's going to be a little iffy, is it not?
We have a bit of a roller coaster for temperatures, and some weather to be aware of. Looks like the snow we've had this morning is starting to taper off a bit. Temperatures are going to be on the rise today, so we see a bit of rain showers and drizzle that will be coming in with that changeover later this afternoon into the evening. There's a Texas low that's going to track off the coast tonight, and it's not really going to have a significant impact, but with falling temperatures late this evening, any rain showers change back to snow, and it looks like we could see, I would say, around 5 centimeters of snow in Halifax tonight. But I have been looking at the guidance, and I mentioned this if anyone was listening on the morning drive, that some of the guidance shifted a bit farther north, and it looks like that trend has somewhat continued, and it looks like there could be the possibility of maybe 7 to 10 centimeters, especially closer to the Atlantic coast where some of those steadier bands will persist. It was initially forecast to, change back to snow tonight and then taper off before sunrise Saturday, but now it looks like the snow will continue for at least part or if not most of the morning Saturday, so that's why we're getting into a bit more snow. I mean, it's not a lot, but I mean, certainly, with the temperatures on the rise and then falling tonight and then, with a fresh 5 or maybe 10 centimeters down, we could be looking at slick road conditions for the start of the weekend. But then things do improve, but cold, -7 tomorrow, -8 on Sunday, Groundhog Day with mainly sunny skies, so not bad, just cold. Then we're up to 3 degrees by Monday, another system mixing some snow over to rain. Temperatures fall back towards the middle of the week, and there could be another system late next week. So we've certainly we flipped the pattern a bit to one that was cold but quiet. Now it's one that's variable with, the jet stream allowing more weather systems to pass through, and with the passage of those systems, we see quite a bit of variability.
Okay, so for travel, let's talk to people who want to hit the road tomorrow, this evening. What advice do you give people?
Well, I would take your time. I mean, it just depends on where you live and where you're going, because obviously we have a lot of listeners who might not reside in Halifax, and I'm obviously giving you the details for Halifax. Farther north and east in the province, the snow will not be as great in terms of amounts. It'll be traced to perhaps 5 centimeters of snow, and most of that coming from the band that's moving through today. Not expecting a great deal of snow tonight. Farther south and west in the province, towards the South Shore and Yarmouth, it could be possibly 10 or 15 centimeters. So if you're traveling farther south and west in the province, you'll want to use extra caution if you are heading out tonight or early tomorrow, because as I mentioned, I mean, the guaranteed high in Halifax is +1. The South Shore, I believe, is expected to get to 3-4 degrees. So we see that rise and then that fall in temperature with, we have the rain in the forecast mixing back to snow. So we get that icy layer on the roads and sidewalks, and then a cold weekend. So it'll be a little challenging, I think, for crews to get it all cleaned up. But you'll want to keep that in mind later tonight and tomorrow with the falling temperatures, and the snow could be slick. And if you're traveling, as always, to the Cape Breton Highlands, the cold northwest winds will blow in some onshore snow squalls up in the Highlands this weekend.
How about past Truro, Cobequid Pass, heading towards Amherst?
So they're getting the initial round of snow today, which won't be significant, as I mentioned. And there could be some periods of light snow and flurries overnight tonight, but I'm not expecting it to accumulate to the same amounts as we're expecting here in Halifax or in the southwest. As I mentioned, a couple to a few centimeters, upwards of generally 5, maybe locally 7 centimeters. So, I mean, that's enough to, cause a few issues, especially through those mountain areas like the Cobequid Pass. So, you will want to use caution moving through those areas. And but farther north in the province, it's not getting as warm today, so we don't have the same concern as it comes to that possibility of, the freezing underneath the snow on the roads. But there could still be some slick spots in those areas early tomorrow.
All right, Groundhog Day.
Sunday, February the 2nd.
Yeah, wow.
Hard to believe already.
So it's either 6 weeks or 4 weeks. That's how it goes. A winter.
I believe it's they always define it as 6 more weeks of winter, which we would have anyways. Really, technically, if you're looking at the astronomical spring, and then an early spring if he doesn't see his shadow. So it's looking like with the mainly sunny skies in the forecast on Sunday that Shubenacadie Sam could see her shadow. So we'll have to. That could mean 6 more weeks of winter, but hey, technically we're already going to have that, right?
That's right. And the Pineapple Express. Tell us about the Pineapple Express.
So that's not for us, if anyone is wondering. But a Pineapple Express is the term given to an atmospheric river, and that's just essentially a narrow column of high content of water vapor in the atmosphere that moves from tropical and subtropical regions towards the mid latitudes. these are not uncommon. There's, often atmospheric rivers present at any given time. And we do see them from time to time here in Atlantic Canada, and more so on the West Coast. But from time to time, they do carry, a very high moisture content. And as they move on to the west coast of, British Columbia, but also the northern states, collides with the mountain ranges, and we see that precipitation just squeezed out of it. So you get into heavy rainfall at coastal elevations, and then usually significant snow at mountainous elevations. And that's what's going to be happening for parts of Northern California as we go this weekend. This atmospheric river bringing significant rain to Northern California at sea level, snow in the mountains. And that Pineapple Express term is because usually it originates near Hawaii. So it moves from Hawaii towards Canada and usually either the States, usually California, northward into British Columbia.
So kind of we've got the Alberta Clippers, we have nor'easters. You called it a Texas what?
Texas low. There's a Colorado low.
Right, that can roll into our area as well?
Yep. Texas and Colorado lows are very common. More so from the fall through to the early spring, because that's when we get most of our quote-unquote storms, if you will. I mean, obviously hurricanes are completely separate and develop over the ocean, but yeah, we have nor'easters, Texas lows, Colorado lows, Alberta Clippers. There's certainly more that are just escaping me at the moment, but we give a lot of terms to our weather, just based on where they originate and how they form, for sure.
Okay, so I guess the long and short of it for the weekend weather is going to be a bit of a mixed bag, but nothing that should stop anybody's plans.
I don't think so. I mean, if you're hitting the roads early tomorrow, you'll want to be careful just because that snow will be lingering for the start of Saturday, and there will likely be some slick road conditions, but not too bad overall. A bit cold. Bundle up if you have any outdoor plans. Certainly Sunday is the pick in terms of if you're looking for more widespread sunshine. But by later in the afternoon on Saturday, the sunshine should be in the mix. So not looking too bad. There's a lot going on. The Ice Festival in Dartmouth. I'm sure they're happy for the -7, -8 temperatures this weekend, because I know they've had years where they're sculpting in above freezing temperatures, right? So I'm sure people, with backyard rinks and even, skating on ponds and lakes, I'm sure they're all happy with this weather, but with these fluctuations in temperatures, certainly we have to be mindful of that too.
Okay, my friend, thanks for doing this, Allister.
Thank you.
Okay, Allister Allders, our weather specialist. Sports and Cecil when we come back. All right, joining us for our sports chat is Cecil Wright, our sports guru. Hello, Cecil.
What's up, Todd, old buddy, old pal?
Not much. I learned something about you this week.
What's that? I'm afraid to ask.
Well, no, don't be afraid to ask. Bill Van Gorder was in with CARP, and he says that you're a member of CARP.
Yeah, I'm the vice president of the Nova Scotia chapter. Very proud to say that, too.
Nice. Great organization.
Yeah, it certainly is. At some point, you should be joining us. You're a senior citizen, aren't you?
I'm 55 years old. I think I qualify, do I not?
There you go. I'll help you.
All right. So let's talk a little football. Last week, I did not watch the Philadelphia game, but I did watch most of the Chiefs game and the Bills. And my, oh my, I mean, what else could Josh Allen do other than win the game? I mean, there's nothing else he could do as a quarterback here.
And I said I thought the Chiefs was going to win.
Yeah.
But I thought he got ripped off because remember he went for it on 4th and 1, and I thought he got it.
Yeah.
They just gave him a terrible spot. I couldn't believe it.
Yeah.
And you had one linesman and the other linesman like a foot on either side of each other. I mean, the National Football League really has to get its act together with the officials, and I know it's a hard job. Mm-hmm. I was a football official back in my younger day myself. But, when there's so much at stake, a chance to go to the Super Bowl, you've got to tighten things like that up.
Yeah, so how close are these teams? And what's the difference? Why is Kansas City just have that little tiny edge over Buffalo?
Well, they've got a great quarterback, you can't take it from Mahomes. He's great, and Travis Kelce is also usually up to the task, and they're a very formidable combination, just like Brady and Gronkowski back in their day.
Yeah.
But I'm going to tell you right now, I'm going out on a ledge, and I'm going for Philadelphia in this game. And it's not because I don't want to see Kansas City three-peat, and it's not because I don't like Kansas City. It's that I think that Jalen Hurts is going to surprise everybody in this game and come up big.
Well, you don't like Kansas City, and you don't want to see them, and you don't like Mahomes, so don't give me that. Huh?
It's true, but don't you agree that Jalen Hurts gets little respect around the league?
Yeah, I would agree with that. I would agree.
Yeah. So here's his opportunity right here.
Yeah. So as far as the Bills game goes, I didn't realize they had the running game that they had. They have quite a stellar running back.
They do. James Cook is excellent.
Unbelievable. Really, really good. What do you do if you're the Bills? How do you go into another offseason with another disappointment like that?
I don't know, man. I think I mentioned last week that they're like the old Bills with Jim Kelly and Thurman Thomas and those guys who they were an excellent team and they were always on top of the league statistically, but they always choked in the big game. I'm afraid that their head coach McDermott might. If it was me, I'd give them another year, but I wouldn't be a bit surprised to see them make a little change at the top.
Yeah, I wouldn't even say that was a choke. I would just say that Kansas City was just a little bit better.
I'm not even sure they were a little bit better. I would say that Buffalo was just a little bit more unlucky.
Yes. Anyway, long-suffering Bills fans, I get it. It's tough. So you're picking the Eagles. That's what you're telling me here?
I'm going to go with the National Football Conference's representative, the Philadelphia Eagles, even though their fans are nuts.
Yeah, you were saying. So what type of point spread do you give it?
Oh, see, now you want points? I would say that Kansas City is going to be favored probably by about 5 or 6.
Yeah.
But I'm going to say Philly by 3, by a field goal. Hopefully, the last play of the game will be a Philadelphia Eagles field goal to win the game.
Wow. Very interesting. Very interesting. All right, the Toronto Blue Jays, Max Scherzer, that would have been a big deal 10 years ago or even 5 years ago, but Max Scherzer, come on.
Man, he's older than Satchel Paige, for crying out loud.
He could be a member of CARP, can he?
Oh, definitely. I think he could. I don't understand the move myself. I don't get it. There are plenty of younger pitchers on the market, and his health has not been good the past 3 years anyway. So I guess they're trying to appease the fan base somehow, but I don't see it. Makes no sense to me.
No, me neither. The Toronto Raptors, look, they're not a playoff team, I wouldn't think, but on a bit of a roll. What do you think about the Raptors' trajectory right now?
Well, I have always liked Scotty Barnes. I think he's a hell of a player, and in my opinion, if he wasn't injured for a good portion of the year, he probably would have got selected to the All-Star team by the coaches. And then they got this other guy that I can't remember his name, but he's kind of like a Larry Bird type player, good shooter from the outside, young player. Mm-hmm. I think in a year or two they might turn it around, but that doesn't say anything for this year. I think it's obvious they're not going to make the playoffs, but they're going to upset a few of the teams at the top, and I guess that should be what they're aiming for right now.
Yeah. What else? What else is cooking in the NHL that's got your interest?
Oh, the Four Nations Cup, man! I can't wait for that stuff.
Yeah.
Are you kidding me? And I'm thinking that Marchand, Crosby, and McKinnon will be on the same line, the Nova Scotia line, and won't we all be excited to see that?
Yeah, that'll be good. Where is that being played? That's in a couple of venues, is it not?
Yeah, I know they're going to be playing at least a game or two in Boston, so that's going to be big for Marchand. Playing on his home ice with those guys representing. They're saying they're representing Canada, but those three will be representing Nova Scotia. No two ways about it. Can't wait to see it happen.
Yeah, does that replace the All-Star weekend or game or this year, or how does that work?
Well, it certainly should if it doesn't, because that All-Star game is just ridiculous. That hockey and basketball, really, if I miss those games, it doesn't really break my heart at all. Whereas when I was a youngster, I used to look forward to the NBA and NHL All-Star games. It used to be pretty exciting. Now it's just they play no defense. They give the shooters wide open lanes to shoot. That's not an all-star game.
No, that's right. Anything else that we missed that you want to talk about? Anything locally or whatever you got? Whatever.
Yes. big game Monday night, high school basketball. It's Armbray and Halifax West. Should be the best game of the year. Armbray, I believe, is undefeated. So, and Halifax West only has a loss or two. So it's going to be a great game, and you can watch it on Eastlink 610 or Channel 10.
Okay, pal. Thanks, Cecil.
Love you.
Love you too, pal. Take care. Cecil Wright, our sports guru. And we've got a lot lined up for Monday, folks. We're going to be reacting to the what I'm assuming at this point will be the tariffs, which we'll know tomorrow. We're going to talk to Mark Brewer, a University of Maine political science professor from the political side of it. I'll have a chat with the CEO of the Atlantic Chamber of Commerce, Dan Kelly, Canadian Federation of Independent Business. Moshe Lander's going to join the show. He's an economist. I'll be chatting with somebody from the Canadian manufacturers and exporters about all of this. I'll be talking to a business leader and somebody impacted by this directly, and we'll try and talk to the Premier as well, and whatever else we can get to react to this, what should be a pretty interesting weekend. And again, we'll give you all the latest on Monday. I'd like to thank Vanessa Vandeness on the other side of the glass. The control board's doing a fine job. As always, thanks for listening. We're back Monday, 10 o'clock. See you then.